Hi guys, Overwatch here, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite mechs in BattleTech. So this guide is going to be focused on multiplayer and skirmish play. I'm not really going to be talking about the campaign too much, but a lot of these tips could very easily be carried over to the campaign. This is a continuation on a previous guide that I did, and I'm just going to be going more in depth with more mechs, and I'm going to be talking about some of the builds that I use on these mechs. So let's just get right into it with the light mechs. So first of all, the two light mechs that I think are standouts are the Jenner and the Urban Mech. So the Jenner is, in my opinion, the best light mech, and the downside to that is that it's pretty costly. So the Jenner is extremely durable. It has probably the highest durability of any light mech, and that's due to its very high speed and relatively high armor. And of course, speed translates to durability in this game. What really makes it shine, in my opinion, is its weapon options. You have an excellent balance of missiles and laser slots that, along with ample tonnage, and that really lets it mount quite a hard punch for a light scout mech. The only thing that can mount more of a punch is the Urban Mech, and some of the commandos can mount a equal punch, but they're a lot less durable. So, looking at my basic build here, this is just the default build. In my opinion, I'd probably strip off some of these jump jets and mount some more, probably missile hardpoints on it, as well as armor. You have SRM-4 and 4 medium lasers, which is a very heavy punch for a light mech. Now let's talk about the second standout, and that is the Urban Mech. So, first thing you notice with the Urban Mech is that it mounts a lot of armor and a lot of weaponry, but is very slow. The Urban Mechs are good for different reasons as compared to all the other lights. They mount a lot of armor, but are very slow. Because of that, they're not really good scouts. They fill a totally different role. They fill kind of an off-brawler role. It's a very weird role for a light mech to be in. They mount enough weaponry that they really shouldn't be ignored. If you ignore an Urban Mech, it is going to rip into you. Now, that being said, they also mount a retarded amount of armor. This is my build here. It's very similar to the stock build. I've just stripped off the small laser and the jump jets, and I used it to mount medium lasers and more armor. 520 armor on a light mech is crazy. So this thing is going to be very difficult to bring down while still mounting a very scary weapon for a light mech in the form of that AC-10. So this thing will do a lot of damage if you ignore it, and it's going to be very difficult to bring down. Meaning this is basically a bullet sponge. I want the enemy to try to bring this thing down, and if they do, then that gives my other mechs free reign to tear into them. And if they ignore it, it's going to be able to tear into them. So it's a very interesting role and kind of a weird role, but it's something that the Urban Mech does very well. Now let's move on to the medium mechs. In this category, there are 3 mechs, in my opinion, that stand out. The first 2 we're going to talk about are the Centurion and the Hunchback. And then we're also going to be talking about one specific build on the Kintaro that was actually recommended to me by a viewer, and I think, after playing with it a little bit, I think it's pretty good. So, the first mech we're going to talk about is the Centurion. So the reason I like Centurions is because they're very capable, all-round mechs. They have excellent options for mounting pretty much whatever you want to. You have 3 different chassis to choose from. You have AL, A, and C, and... Oh, sorry, you have 2 chassis to choose from. You have AL and A. And your only real constraint here is that you only have 1 ballistic hardpoint between the 2 of them. They also mount a lot of energy and missile hardpoints there as well. And because of that, you can kit them to engage at any range. You can slap an AC-20 and SRMs on this thing, and you have a very dangerous close-range fighter. You can mount a balanced mix of weaponry and have it engage at any range like I usually do. This over here is one of my builds, and it's basically just mounting a bunch of lasers and LRMs, so it can engage at any range and is very dangerous in the close range, or sorry, the middle range. Also, notice how this mounts 920 armor. It mounts a lot of armor. So you have a platform that's very fast, very heavily armed, and very heavily armored. And for only, roughly 5 million or so C-bills, if you compare that to... Oops, did not mean to do that. Compare that to a Jenner, which at, 4 million, you're paying an extra million for an extra 20 tons of armor, engine, and weaponry. So for that reason, I quite like Centurions. The other standout mech is the Hunchback for me. And you have two chassis you can choose from by default. And you basically can choose between a ballistic boat and a energy boat. You do not have you don't have any missile slots at all with these mechs. And for that reason, they are not as good, they're not as versatile as a Centurion. They're listed as having the same movement speed, but I think that might be off, as a Centurion, but I think that might be off a little bit. As, in my opinion, I think the Hunchback is a little bit slower in the field. I could be a little bit wrong about that, though. I don't really know. And you're looking at a mech here that mounts a lot of close-range punch behind a lot of armor. My build for this is actually very similar to the basic energy build here. The only thing I changed from this build is I stripped off some of the heat sinks, I stripped off the small laser, and I mounted additional armor, which in my opinion makes it a little bit more threatening. And I found that it was actually a little bit too heat efficient with all those heat sinks on it. So you do not want this thing getting close to you. Mounting 8 medium lasers. Medium lasers are the most efficient in terms of damage per ton weapon in the game. I would definitely not want to be in close for the Hunchback. If I see a Hunchback in online play, I am backing up. The last mech, and this was recommended to me by a viewer, was a Kintaro build. So Kintaros mount a lot of missile hardpoints as well as energy hardpoints. And the stock has them kitted as this kind of weird brawler. They mount 3 SRM-6s and an LRM-5. I don't know why the LRM-5's there. I guess just to strip off some evasion at long range. I, however, changed that just a little bit for my mech. I stripped off some of the armor, and in exchange, I mounted a lot of LRMs. Let's take a little bit closer look at this. So we have LRM-40 here. We have 2 LRM-15s and 2 LRM-5s. And the LRMs are decently spread out. We have or I shouldn't say very heavy. We have moderate front armor and relatively light rear armor. And we mount a lot of LRM ammo. I need to play around with it a little bit more, see if I actually need this heatsink there. But yeah, so this packs for 6 million C-bills. An LRM-40 mech is pretty good, and it's pretty fast. This thing's going to be faster than a catapult is, and it mounts almost the same punch. A catapult is, I believe, LRM... Is it LRM-40? Oh, no. I'm sorry. A catapult is LRM-30, by a stock one is anyway. I would definitely mount some more LRMs on that. So yeah, you're actually mounting more of a missile punch than a catapult for roughly 1.5 million fewer C-bills. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. So for that reason, I really like this build. You definitely have to keep it safe. If you can keep it safe, though, it's going to do a number on the enemy. Now let's take a look at some of the heavy mechs. In my opinion here, the standouts in this category are the Thunderbolt and the Catapult. So the reason that I like I believe the Thunderbolts. Where is the Thunderbolt? There we go. So we have 3 different Thunderbolt options here, and they're basically all-round mechs. I would describe these options as being a Centurion, but 15 tons heavier. So as you can see, you can either mount a energy and missile boat, a ballistic, basically all round, 2 ballistic, 4 energy, 2 missile boat, or you have another energy boat. And they all mount about 1,000 armor stock. I would play around with these a little bit more. I really haven't gone too in-depth in playing around with different builds on these guys, but I would just describe them as a heavier Centurion, and I would use them the same way. They're very fast, they have good heat efficiency, they mount a lot of armor and a lot of weaponry, and for that reason, I think they're good all-round mechs, and I like them for that exact reason. The other mech that I think is really good here is the catapult. And the catapult I would describe as your kind of standard fire support mech. So you have the option here of mounting 2 missile hardpoints and 4 energy on the one that I prefer to use. I might have to go in here and try to increase the missile loadout. Maybe go for a LRM 40 rather than the LRM 30. It mounts stock. Right now, just for on my build, I've stripped out some of the jump jets in order to mount additional heat sinks and armor as well. So mine has about 1,000 armor, which puts it at about as durable as the Thunderbolt, as opposed to the stock 800 armor. So this catapult is meant to get into the mid-range and can absorb a decent amount of enemy fire. So if you are building for specifically, keeping it at longer range, you can definitely strip off some of that armor and mount a heavier missile payload. So yeah, if you mount a catapult, that is a lot. That's going to cover a lot of your fire support needs, and for that reason, I really like it. This is a very iconic mech. It's kind of what you standard think of, the standard fire support mech. Now let's go on to the assaults. So in the assaults, there are 3 that stand out to me, and that's the Atlas, no surprise there, the Stalker, and the King Crab. And the reason I think that the Stalker stands out is it's the only mech that can mount 4 LRM 20s. So it can mount a LRM 80 payload. There actually is another assault mech that can do the same. However, this mounts it in a not dumb loadout. So as you can see here, if I want to fit this thing specifically for fire support, I can put an LRM 20 in basically 4 different locations. That's going to make it pretty difficult for the enemy to blast off all of my weapons. I'm not at risk of losing all of my LRMs if I lose a specific hardpoint. The rest of this is just going to be filled out with armor, heat sinks, and ammo. Okay, and then I believe it is Highlander. Highlander, I want to say, let me check, can also mount a LRM 40. I'm sorry, 4 LRM 20s. However, if you notice, all of these are concentrated on one side of the mech. So if you lose this left torso for whatever reason, you've just lost all of your weapons. So for that reason, I don't really like it. I think that the Stalker is your kind of standard if you want to carry a shit ton of fire support. If you want to just bring heavy fire support, retarded amount of LRMs and long-range weapons in an assault mech, the Stalker is what you take. Next is the Atlas. So the Atlas is... yeah, it's an Atlas. There's nothing not to like about this guy. It's a tank and super heavy brawler. There's really nothing more I need to say about this thing. It's a total juggernaut. It has good hard points for missiles, ballistics, lasers, pretty much whatever you want to mount. And you are going to want to mount some long-range options to this because it is going to take it a long time to close. Once it actually gets there, though, it mounts the hardest punch of any mech in the game, both figuratively and literally. As you see, it has the highest melee damage in the game. And yeah, there's really nothing not to like about this mech. The other mech that stands out to me is the King Crab. And the reason I think the King Crab stands out is just because of its ability to mount 2 AC-20s. And I believe it's the only mech that can do that. And The reason I say that this stands out, I'm not sure if it stands. I don't think it stands out above an Atlas just because it's not as durable, but it stands pretty much close to an Atlas. Is because of its ability to just destroy whatever it hits. If this thing closes into range with you, you're dead. Because it's just going to use those AC-20s and it's going to blast off whatever you have. So, for that reason, I really like it. As always, guys, if you have your own mechs that you like, please let me know down in the comments below. Hope to see you next time. Bye.